The Washington's National Mall here in the capital of the United States of America. In front of us we are seeing the US Capitol, and on the other side you might recognize this in countless TV shows, movies, documentary specials, the Washington Monument. Today we're going to walk the entire length of the Washington National Mall from the area here close to the US Capitol all the way down to the Lincoln Memorial. I'm Ariel, you're watching Urbanist, and join me as we learn about the history of the memorials, the museums that we pass by, and also the mall itself, how they come about, and what secrets still lurk in these places. Let's walk around. Let me know where you're watching from. And let me know, what's your favorite experience of Washington, D.C.? Where have you been? When did you come here? Let me know. So the sprinklers came on just right before I started my live video. And there in the distance we see the US Capitol building. The Washington National Mall extends from the US Capitol, which is the home of the legislative department of the United States of America. America is divided into three branches of government. Legislative is over here, that's Congress and Senate. Then we have all the way down, it extends to the Lincoln Memorial. And the Lincoln Memorial is of course one of the most famous memorials, known for the famous speech by Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. King, for the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Let's walk around, let me know where you're watching from, and let me know what's your favorite Washington, D.C. movie as well. So Bella, you were able to sit in the Senate hearing 2018. Oh, cool. How was that? Let me know. I'm curious. So the Capitol was first built in its first iteration in 1800 by a man that we heard a lot of his name in Boston. His name is Charles Bulfinch. He's famous for the Massachusetts State House, which is in the same style as this US Capitol building. Of course, the US Capitol building has gotten bigger over the years, including through the Civil War, when Abraham Lincoln put a lot of money and support to finishing the US Capitol once and for all. And here's a depiction of it. Actually, I don't have the depiction of it. Alright, so never mind. But let's walk down the mall, where we're going to see a lot of interesting sights. And the mall is gigantic. Here's a map of the mall. So we're walking around section 9 and 21, which is right by the Museum of the American Indian, right over there. Hello, Kay. Kay, you say I should practice my presidential wave. Presidential wave whenever I get elected president. I will only run for president when I'm running, I'm the oldest president ever on record. So permitting who wins this year, well, that would mean that I would have to run for president after 80 years old. Hello, Elisa. Nice to see you here. Here are some stars for your coffee. Thank you so much, Susu. I appreciate it. All right, let's walk down the mall. I'll stop by a few museums. I already did a live video of the Museum of the American Indian, which I highly recommend checking it out. Very beautiful museum inside. But let's first go to the Smithsonian, well, pass by the Air and Space Museum, and then go to the Smithsonian Castle, which will be interesting. Is that larger than Central Park? Great question. I don't think it's as long as Central Park. I think it might be a few acres shy of Central Park. The park, I think itself is pretty big. So if anyone knows the exact acreage, let me know in the comments. Lori says, yes, thank you again very much for taking us to the museum. My pleasure. Hello, Angie from Covina, California. National Mall is 146 acres, yeah. Yeah, so much smaller than Central Park. It's an eighth of the size of Central Park, give or take. Orlando from Ukraine, welcome, nice to see you here. Oh, so beautiful, looking at both sides. And the sun is starting to show, which is nice. Usually this is filled with people, and it is the pandemic, and Washington, D.C. has been hit especially hard compared to other cities in the eastern coast. So it is extra empty here. And this is 1 p.m. in the weekday. Grass looks a bit scraggly. Yeah, it does. If the National Mall, where is Macy's, Sephora, Old Navy, and JCPenney's? Great question. National Mall does not stand for a shopping mall. Shopping mall actually gets its name from a mall where they play a few different sports. There was like this one specific English sport where they played on quote unquote malls. The shopping mall ended up getting that term later in the 1950s. They just end up co-opting that term. So this National Mall predates our modern conception of the shopping mall. So no stores here. It's just a very long piece of land with gardens and memorials and museums. Let's pray for the tourism industry. Chris says Ariel actually stopped. Hilarious. Indeed. Joe, you switched to YouTube. Welcome. Will you visit Arlington? Yes, most likely you'll see Arlington the weekend. Stay tuned. What is covering this road? These are just rocks, dirt. So this is a dirt path. This is not a asphalt road, and it's merely pedestrian. So there's huge cranes here. Someone mentioned that earlier, and these cranes are for the National Air and Space Museum, which is one of the coolest museums, in my opinion, here in the National Mall. Unfortunately, it is closed because they are redoing it. I think it's due for an upgrade. Hopefully they make it even cooler. But I'll show you a photo of it that I have inside. A lot of people might recognize it for this. You do have the speed of the drone. The walkway is crushed walkway, so it drains. Oh, interesting. Gwen, thank you for letting us know. We have two tourists that are attempting to go inside. it is closed. There are tourists from Maryland. And here, Jackie just mentioned she got a $7 hot dog here. Yeah, I can imagine hot dogs could get very expensive here. I remember going through a NASA space rocket. Yes, you could do that here, which is really fun. I'm so glad you're enjoying your time here in DC. Yeah, I am, Pouty. I lived in Georgetown, Pouty says, for 15 years, and it's truly beautiful when the cherry trees are blooming around the tidal basin. Yeah, I've come here before in springtime. I really fell in love with it as well. So I know what you mean. So this should be the Museum of Natural History right over here. And this museum is filled with so many treasures. Am I heading to the Lincoln Memorial? Oh, yes, I am. So here's a look inside. And I'm not entirely sure if this one's open. Oh, absolutely marvelous. I wish it was open normal hours. I would love to go during the night and spend the night at the museum. And here's an aerial view. Hello, Judith. You didn't miss too much. No worries. I was a little bit late. I had to charge my phone after doing the Museum of Native American History tour. So how did the National Mall come about? Well, for that we have to go back to the very origins of Washington, D.C. George Washington was bestowed the honor of choosing the nation's capital. However, they didn't want the nation's capital to be in a major city like New York or Philadelphia, because those were northern states, and the 13 colonies were split up even in its early history by cultural boundaries and also industrial boundaries by north and south. North had a lot of manufacturing, a lot of commerce, a lot of financial firms. The South was mostly raw goods. And thus, there was a little bit of a interesting power structure. So the South pleaded to have the capital maybe a little bit further down, like Annapolis. That quite didn't work out either. So George Washington decided to have the nation's capital close to where he lives, Mount Vernon. He wasn't actually ever lived here in Washington, D.C. The first president to occupy Washington, D.C. was John Adams, the second president of the United States of America. But where did George Washington live? Well, he actually lived in New York first few years and a little bit of time in Philadelphia as well. But why did he choose this specific spot? Well, it was along the Potomac rivers, which leads out to the Atlantic Ocean, and it's shielded by Delaware and I think it's Virginia's huge neck that juts out into the ocean. So it's a very great guarded harbor. And beyond that, it has a passage to the west, which other cities quite did not offer. Boston definitely did not offer that, since it was no major rivers that go further into the interior of the United States. New York does offer that, but New York was a little bit too northern for most of the colony's preferences. And they didn't want to go too south because most of the wealth was still concentrated up here north. And thus, George Washington decided that this would be the perfect place because it's close by the port town of Georgetown. Also, Alexandria was nearby as well. And this area of the Potomac was very cheap land as well, and there was not that many Native Americans. And the reason for that is the majority of this land was very swampy. Now, the interesting thing, as we keep learning about cities all around the world, you might end up realizing, wait a minute, a lot of these major cities are in gigantic swamps. Parts of New York was built on a swamp. Parts of Boston was built on a swamp. And that is something really that kind of has fascinated me. Is Georgetown named after GW? I don't think so. I don't think Georgetown is named after GW. Washington, D.C. is named after GW. But what does D.C. stand for? It stands for District of Columbia. Columbia being the goddess of America, similar to Roma being the goddess of Rome. America wanted its own goddess, so they co-opted elements of Minerva and Columbia, or Minerva and Athena, and made a new goddess draped in the American flag, Columbia. So this really looks a lot like the Champs de Mars in Paris. Here we have the sculpture garden. What do you prefer, the Natural History Museum or the American History Museum? The times I've come here to Washington, D.C., I've loved the American History Museum. Natural History Museum, I think it's hard to beat the one in New York, though this one is pretty magical too. So this is a sculpture garden here, and I think you had to get timed entry. But this is, and forgive me for mispronouncing this, the Hirschhorn Museum. Has a very strange kind of look to it. It looks like a gigantic UFO. Yeah, it looks like a gigantic UFO. And usually the museum is open in its interior, but of course, like most of the museums around here, they are also being repaired. And it also has the similar shape to the Guggenheim. Here's how it looks like inside. And here's the art exhibit inside. Looks like a bomb shelter. It really does look like a bomb shelter. Was Baltimore prominent back then? It was. It was prominent for a city that was below Philadelphia and Boston. But it never quite took hold. It tried to become the nation's capital, but it didn't work out. I think it wasn't quite well off as nearby Georgetown. Your insert photos are very helpful. I'm so glad you're enjoying them. Pass is not required, it says. Interesting. This is actually a good time to visit DC. No people. It is nice to have DC all to myself. It does feel creepy at times, but at other times it feels pretty freeing. Usually this would be packed to the brim, especially during October. A lot of kids come here. It's known as 8th grade season with the locals. So you would have gigantic school trips swarming all these areas of Washington, D.C., leaving space for no one. Oh, is this a De Suervo sculpture? He's an artist still alive, I think in his 90s, who was based in Astoria, Queens. who started the Socrates Sculpture Garden, and he has a sculpture right here. That's awesome. Hey Tosio, hey Joe. Why was the National Mall created in Washington, D.C.? Well, George Washington picked Washington, D.C. to be the grand capital. And since it was a federal district, they wanted to go all out and make the federal district into a grand planned city like Versailles. People might look at Washington, D.C. and say, wait, it looks like Paris. Well, Washington, D.C. predates Paris. And George Washington hired a man called Pierre L'Enfant to build this grand city. Pierre L'Enfant was a Frenchman who joined the American forces, became George Washington's close confidant and chief engineer, and he was hired to build this city. L'Enfant was very excited to input his grand vision into this city, and thus he ended up making the original L'Enfant plan. Crisscrossing diagonal streets, making a lot of parks and public spaces, and also a gigantic green space in the middle, which, let's zoom in. Right there, you see? You see that centerpiece? That is the center of the U.S. Capitol. The intention is that the U.S. Capitol will have its eyes on the executive branch, which is the White House. And the White House, the executive branch, will have eyes on the legislative branch. L'Enfant really didn't care too much about the judicial branch. It didn't have quite as much importance as it does today. So the judicial branch was kind of smushed with the legislative branch. So this is the Smithsonian Castle. Now, what is the Smithsonian? The Smithsonian has a very unique origin story. Here is its logo. They are an institution dedicated to spreading knowledge in this great nation of ours. They spread all types of different knowledge. It might be about Native Americans, as we saw earlier today, or it could be about air and space, or it could be about natural history, or it can be about ancient history, or anything. They have over 150 million objects located here that are not mostly on display. What you see on the museums, imagine 150 million more. The person who built this is an architect. You might know his name if you've seen my New York City broadcasts. He built many wonderful New York City structures, including the great St. Patrick's Cathedral, James Renwick. He also built the smallpox hospital on Roosevelt Island, which are the ruins that I've done a few videos of before. Now, this is the building that is basically the night of the museum. Night of the museum was supposed to take place in New York City's Natural History Museum, but it actually was shot here in the Smithsonian. But where does the Smithsonian come from, and why is there a huge castle in its honor? Well, the Smithsonian was named after James Smithson. And James Smithson was a man, a legitimate child of an earl, born in Paris and moved back to England and amassed a great amount of wealth. However, he never stepped foot in America. When he was near his dying days, around 1829, he wrote a will bestowing his mass wealth to his nephew. But he had one stipulation, that if his nephew did not produce an heir, it would be given to the United States of America, for them to make an institute named in his honor called the Smithsonian, dedicated to learning and knowledge. His nephew did not have an heir, and they moved forward with giving all of his grand wealth to the U.S. But he never stepped foot in the U.S. Did he have family in the U.S.? No. No one really knows why this benevolent benefactor decided to give all his wealth to some country he was never a part of, some country he never even stepped foot in. But he was also a very talented mineralogist. He actually has a mineral named after him, which you can see in one of the Smithsonian museums. Smithsonite, right here. He was a mineralogist. But no, it's a weird mystery. I tried to find some answers as to why he gave his wealth, and there's not really that much evidence as to why. So very, very weird, anonymous or random donation in essence. Come on, nephew, you had one job. Yeah, he had one job to produce an heir, and he failed. So National Museum, 1899. That's when they built this first version of the Smithsonian. So Smithsonite is not kryptonite.
Oh, say their name. Yes.
And not to be confused with Samsonite, the luggage company. That's right, 4K Wonder. So here it says a look inside the Arts and Industries building, and this was a museum. I think it still is, as far as I know. It says the Arts and Industry building is the second oldest Smithsonian building, with the first building being designed for the National Museum. As the Smithsonian's first museum was known, it was constructed between 1879 and 1881 to meet the need for more exhibition space for the rapidly increasing collections, which included a railroad boxcar with loads of items from 1876 Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia. Really gorgeous structure. Wow. Really beautiful brickwork. Let's take a look inside. Oh, that's so cool. So apparently, throughout the early 1900s, in this castle, there were so many hauntings with the staff. And this was reported by the Smithsonian themselves, and they have an article on it. It was haunted so many times, the staff kept complaining about random noises, about bumps in the night, about random doors opening. They even heard ghostly birds chirping, claiming that it was the souls of the birds that were innocently killed in order to make taxidermy. That the president of the Smithsonian put a full stop to anyone working beyond midnight. And I'm not sure to this day if anyone still works beyond midnight. So what ghosts exactly were they so afraid of? Who knows? There's some live music down there. That's cool. What books or other resources would you recommend for some profanes who want to learn architecture and urbanism of New England? Orlando. So Orlando, this would be considered the Mid-Atlantic region of the U.S., just to clarify that one thing. But if you want to learn about just architecture and urbanism in general here in the United States, one of my favorite YouTube channels is City Beautiful. Absolutely love that YouTube channel. Speak Hall is where I work and really haunted. Okay, so here is, that was the Arts and Industry building, the smaller of the castles, and this one is the larger of the castles. Let's take a closer look. This is the James Renwick one. So I think I misspoke. This one might not be James Renwick, though it is built in the same style. This one's the James Renwick one. There's many other resources. I learned from a bunch of different YouTube channels. Another one, a podcast I recommend listening to is 99% Invisible. A great podcast to learn very interesting stories about urbanism and architecture. Looks kind of Gothic. Yep, that's what James Renwick was very famous for. Gothic style architecture. What other museums have time passes right now? It's the Museum of the American Indian. I think the Museum of Art, the Women's Portrait Gallery, or the National Gallery and the Women's Museum. There is a few others. Should be like 2 or 3 others. Beautiful structure. So, is it a cathedral? No, Orlando. So, James Renwick was very famous for building cathedrals. So I misspoke. The other castle is not the James Renwick one. This one is. So he was famous for the St. Patrick's Cathedral, and he built many other cathedrals all around America. However, this is strictly built for the Institute. So it is stone, not brick. Halloween version of St. Pat's. Yeah, it basically looks like that. Strange to see the mall so vacant. Yeah, it is. It is very strange to see the mall so vacant. All right. Are you going to the National Zoo? I don't think so. A lot of people keep asking to check it out, but I don't know. Zoos usually are not so compelling on live video. But a lot of people do keep recommending it. Let me know what you enjoy about the zoo. The architecture reminds me of the smallpox hospital. I guess he had so many ideas. Well, there's so many ways you can build architecture, especially in the 1800s. So I don't blame him for having a aesthetic. And he did master that aesthetic after a while. There is an official panda, yeah, in the National Zoo. That I do know about. Oh, family taking a portrait. So let's make our way to the Washington Monument and then cross it because we're going to go to Lincoln Memorial. So no skyscrapers can be built taller than the Washington Monument, yeah. The Washington Monument was one of the very first monuments to be built in the honor of a great person, but not in their likeness. There's nothing in the Washington Monument that has the likeness of George Washington. Oh, I think we see Marine Force One. There's 2 helicopters passing through. Look at that. Yep. It seems that POTUS is on the move. So POTUS is on the move, and I've taken off my mask because it's extremely empty. I'm staying away, very far away from people. So POTUS is on the move. The Washington Monument was supposed to be 600 feet tall, but it's 555 feet tall. And no building in Washington, D.C. has been decreed to be taller than that. Most buildings in Washington, D.C. have to be the height of the width, to a certain ratio to the width of the street, similar to what there's in Paris. That's why there's some streets, especially on this side, in Foggy Bottom and Chinatown, that look very kind of aesthetically pleasing because they're very human-sized, as architects or urban designers would say. However, there's a few exceptions. There's one building, the post office building, which is now a Trump Hotel, is 300 feet tall, and that's basically the tallest building in DC. Now they want to maybe change that and maybe make DC into a skyscraper city. The only skyscrapers around this area is Arlington, which is right across the bridge after the Lincoln Memorial, which we'll see a glimpse of. Hi to Melania, my ex-neighbor. Oh yes, Slovenia and Slovakia, yeah. New York City has garbage higher than that. So interesting thing is there's no garbage on the street in Washington, D.C. And that's because Washington, D.C. was actually built with alleyways, unlike New York. So D.C. has alleyways. So here's the Smithsonian metro station. Have I been to the National Museum of African American? No, I have not. Not yet. We're walking all this. So the Natural History Museum has a very similar architecture to the National Gallery. Stephanie says, holding in your hand Washington Monument? Wait, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like, hold it? So sharp. Pointy. The damn aluminum top. All right. There we go. Taking it up as a pencil and writing with it. Don't worry, everyone. I'm okay. I'll recover from the pointy building. Let's walk on the grass, shall we? Hopefully there's no geese poo over here. Whoa! Look at that view. Clouds looking cool behind the U.S. Capitol. I visited all these places 2 years ago. Oh, cool, Maria. And very well manicured. It is very well manicured, yeah. Love your playful spirit. So refreshing, says Justine. Oh, I'm so glad you do. Let's keep shrugging along to head over to the second part of the National Mall. Hey Ariel, who mows the lawn? Who mows the lawn here? I don't know. This is a national park. So my educated guess is that it is mowed by the National Park Service, which is federally operated. So it's not a state park. Here in the US, we have city parks, there's state parks, and there are national parks. each are managed by the corresponding jurisdiction. So Washington D.C. has more national parks than most U.S. states have. They are way bigger. Washington D.C. I think has a higher population than Wyoming, if I'm correct. A bench test. Yes, a bench test I think is required on the National Mall. I think they're the same benches that we saw yesterday. Yep, I think they are. We like to visit the Holocaust Museum in Washington. Adam, I've done that before. No. I do respect that museum. It's a beautiful museum. It's a great place to learn your history. But it is rather depressing, naturally so, and I rather not visit it or show it on video. But I do recommend it if anyone's really interested to check it out. So let's do a bench test. Let's see if this reaches the benchmark. Benchmark that has been set by national monuments. Is this a monumental bench or is it just a bench? Let's see if it's either monumental bench or if it's a basic bench. All right. Let's sit down. Ooh, yeah. Oh, wow. This is a nice bench. I can rest over here. Oh, I can go for a nice nap. Oh, I like this bench. There's a mosquito. All right, so that gets 1 point off for that mosquito. There's a lot of mosquitoes here in Washington, D.C. But this is a nice bench. This is a really cool bench. Ooh, I'm really liking this bench. Wow. This bench deserves to be in America's front yard. This is definitely America's bench right here. America's bench. Yup. No bird poo either, which is nice. Falling leaves, which is a nice plus. You have huge Washington Mall. You have random Washingtonians running about and taking selfies. It is a very, very good bench. This reaches the high benchmark. It is definitely not a basic bench. It's a monumental bench. Yeah. Oh yeah. This gets a good 9 out of 10 for when it comes to benches. It looks basic, but trust me, it's comfy. The back is perfect. It's great for 2 people or maybe 3 if you're with if you have kids. It might be good for taking a quick nap. Might be good for sitting cross-legged, which I like to do. So, monumental bench. 9 out of 10. Highly recommend sitting here. Have at it. That is the bench review of the day. Central Park has mozzies during the summertime. Yes, mozzies. I love that nickname for mosquitoes. Yeah. Washington D.C. has more because, again, this is recovered swamp, and we all know that the swamp is never truly drained. Oh, am I pointing at the U.S. Capitol? That was not any reference to anything. But swamps will always be swamps, no matter how many skyscrapers we put on them. You can tell by the mosquitoes and by the flooding, which is very interesting. If not for the mosquito, indeed, if not for the mosquito, it would be a 10. But come here three seasons out of the year, except for winter, you will be hard-pressed to not encounter mosquitoes. Should have bought a meal to picnic on that bench. Yes, I probably will do that. You know, there's barely food here, but we see food trucks here, which is nice. But in general, there's barely food in this nearby area of the mall. If you're really hungry, and when things are back to normal, go to the Museum of the American Indian for some amazing lunch. And since the museums are free, you can easily drop in if you're just exploring the area and not necessarily going to that museum specifically. You can also take the circulator bus, which I'll feature. It's over there in the distance. And that is, it goes all around the National Mall. 200 people are watching. Oh, awesome. Manolito says that the food trucks are good. Interesting. Did anyone enjoy any specific food truck? Let me know in the comments. And do you think there should be a museum about benches? If there isn't, I think it's time. It's time that we make a museum about benches. The one bench to rule them all. The museum that will hit all the benchmarks. I got 99 benches, but a museum ain't one, as Jay-Z would have said. Time for a coffee break. I wish there was a coffee shop here. There isn't a coffee shop as far as I know. There's only a few Starbuckses on the side streets, but there's no like coffee shop or coffee stand here on the mall. Lord of the benches, says Kathy. The Aerospace Museum, yes, generally museums have very terrible food. From my personal experience, I've been to many cities around the world. It's always been the case that museums have terrible food. The Museum of the American Indian is one of the very, 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 very rare exceptions. Someone earlier said, do you like horror movies? It sounds like you like horror movies because of your voice. No, I don't. I just like speaking dramatically sometimes. I know. Sometimes, life deserves to be more interesting, especially when you do it with a little bit of a pizzazz in your voice. Why speak in the normal tone all the time, always be like this? Why be very professional and speak in a monotone voice to give you a straight history lesson today? Like if you're watching a PBS show and you slowly fall into sleep because I tell you that the Washington Monument is 500 feet tall. And also, it was supposed to have a big pantheon. That sounds really boring. That's why I add a little bit of spice. But some allspice, nothing too spicy. What's P&P? I'm not American. Apologize for my ignorance. P&P is a television show. Here's the Museum of African American History and Culture. Oh, okay, so there is a few exceptions when it comes to museums and good food. Thank you for mentioning that, Justine. There is the Metropolitan Museum of Art also has good food, and also the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York has good food as well. And MoMA too. I've had really good food at MoMA. Elisa says, no, I want the spicy voice. Metropolitan Museum of Art, oh yeah. Urbanist B. Griffin says it's the actor in you. I never acted in the movie role. And this light changed so quick. I was about to take it, and it changed in like 10 seconds. Whoa, it's crazy quick. There used to be more trucks with coffee and such, but COVID chased them off. Yeah, Randall, I can imagine. Is the Washington Memorial open? Yes. You can go into the memorial with tickets, time tickets, go up to the very top, see the entire views, but you only have 10 minutes because you have to go right back down. And that's it. You're done. Literally. That's the new stipulations when it comes to the Washington Monument. So they are not open for everyone. All right, so this light is very quick. so quick that even if it's a short amount of distance, we have to like sprint forward. So we're gonna do that. So stay tuned. Wait for it, everyone. Can we make it? Once the light changes, can we make it in that quick flash of the second across this very long road? It's basically like a highway. Are you going up there if it's open? No, I wouldn't go up there because there's no service. If I were just traveling for pleasure, then yeah, I would go up there. But I don't know. I just since I can't make a video of it, I wouldn't bother. It is, yeah. It took a while for the Washington Monument to open up because in 2011, an earthquake shook this area of America. Virginia had a 5.6 earthquake on the Richter scale, which is pretty damn big. Yeah, I felt it in my home in New York. I thought I was getting dizzy for no random reason. I was like, this is weird. But then I ended up realizing everyone experienced the shaking. And that earthquake made a dent all the way in the very top of the Washington Monument, which I talked about yesterday. I'll show you again, right there. 2011, summer 2011. Let me know if you felt that earthquake. Here we have a marker, it says a monumental legacy. The Washington Monument honors George Washington, hero of the American Revolution and the very first president of the United States. When this stunning stone obelisk was completed in 1884, it was the tallest building in the world. Towering over Washington, D.C., reminding us of Washington's life and legacy, including the capital city that bears its name. So let's go around it. One of the tallest buildings in DC, aside from the monument. It's the post office building, which is now the Trump Hotel, 300 feet tall. All right, so let me walk around so I can show. Let's go to the Vietnam Memorial. I'd rather go around the monument. I'll catch a ride on the police car. Thank you for the beautiful memories of Washington, D.C., says Maria. Oh, I'm so glad, Maria. I experienced too an earthquake. My laptop fell from the table, says Elisa. Yeah. It's quite terrifying. My husband was working in D.C., says Stephanie, when the earthquake hit. And it felt like the Department of the U.S. Interior. And he felt it within the Department of the U.S. Interior. This is an area during the amazing cherry blossom season. Oh, yes. Oh, so there's a gift shop here. Hey, Ariel. We do have the same name. Welcome. Nice to see you here. Go to the Korean Memorial. I'll see if I can go to that. Probably. But we're going to go first to the Vietnam, since we got to choose one side of the reflecting pool first. Labri says, "You're a great speaker." Thank you, Labri. I appreciate that. The United States Park Police over here. My dad was a Korean War vet, and he never got to see the memorial. Oh, Randall. Yeah, my grandfather was a Korean War vet as well. He also never got to see the memorial. It was built shortly before he actually came here to Washington, D.C. Have you ever tried one of those segways during any of your travels? Says Jackie. No, not yet. You asked that at the perfect time when we got a big woohoo. So no, not yet. I've not tried it out. Cuando fuimos ahí, crezos estaban en flor, tan lindos. Ah, qué bonito que viste todas las flores que estaban saliendo aquí en esta temporada. Monica says when she came over here, there was a lot of blooming flowers and trees. The scooters are actually fun. Oh, that's awesome. Mimi says, thank you for a nice live. Yeah, my pleasure. We'll get into more history as we get closer to the Vietnam War Memorial. There wasn't too much here to talk about in this first part of the mall. Randall, my dad loved the Vietnam Memorial. A lot of family members went over there. Oh, I'm so glad, yeah. I'm so excited to see the Vietnam War Memorial because of its architecture specifically. So Manolito says, when I went, I cried in the Vietnam Memorial. A veteran was crying, telling me the story of a friend who died there. Oh, hey, Aman, thank you so much for tuning in. Greetings from London. Can't wait to go back to London. The Vietnam Memorial is sobering. You really don't appreciate how everything is so big when you come here. Yeah, until you come here. Yeah, it's huge. Huge amount of space around here. And do I ever do GoPros attached to my chest? No, I haven't really done that type of videos. I like walking. Sometimes the occasional car tour. That's my vibe. But my friend Action Kid does a lot of bike tours, so check him out for that. Hello, Jorge from Guadalajara, México. Bienvenidos. Gracias por viendo esta emisión. Puede hacerme cualquier pregunta en español. Soy bilingüe. Tú ya sabes eso, claramente, y tú has visto anterior. I'm bilingual, I speak Spanish, so you can ask me in either language. All right, now we're getting to the reflecting pool. This is quite a long walk. Wow, 1 hour to get to the other side. Whoa. And I'm walking pretty fast. So do allow for some time. I'm walking pretty fast. And that first half was uphill. Hence why I'm a little bit out of breath. Even though you can't really tell in terms of the camera, it is uphill. And I'll show you an aerial view. And why are there no benches? Yeah, there's no benches here. There should be a bench. It would be really nice if there was a bench. But yeah, so fair warning, if you do this walk, It's quite an arduous walk despite its looks. Let me show you some aerial photos as we're walking towards the reflecting pool. So originally the Washington Monument in front of it was going to have a huge garden. That was when they started making the McMillan Plan. And the McMillan Plan was going to change everything in the sense of really extending the mall far beyond its original boundary, which was basically here where we're standing. This was swamp, tidal basin, and the river. They had to dredge the swamp. They had to fill in part of the basin and the river in order to make this extension of the mall. And here is an aerial view of the mall itself. So as you can see, U.S. Capitol, we walked slightly a slight incline up to the Washington Monument, and now we're going on a slight decline towards the Lincoln Memorial. Take with you a portable camping chair. I don't require that, luckily. Though if you do require that, yeah, do come prepared. It's nice. Hey, Aman says $2 £2 super chat. Thank you so much, Aman. I appreciate that for the £2 super chat. Michael says you're awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate it. Are you pointing to the south? Am I pointing to the south? So let me know the direction. This is south. Yes, this is south. And that's south, right here. That is... Actually, we had to clarify. Let me know which side is which. All right, here we've reached the reflecting pool. Let's see what we have in store over here. This is the World War II Memorial. I think you're heading north, B. Griffin. Thank you for clarifying. Yeah, I don't quite know the directions off the top of my head, so we're going northward then. And here's the World War II Memorial. E pluribus unum. Are you enjoying the National Mall? I am. It's a very beautiful area. This was dedicated by George W. Bush, President of the United States of America. Frederick St. Florine was the design architect. It was the American Battle Monuments Commission, 2004. Commemorating all the men who sacrificed their lives during our war against the Germans and the Japanese and the Axis powers. Very impressive sight. Yo, yes. Women who stepped up were measured as citizens of the nation, not as women. This was a people's war, and everyone was in it. Colonel Hobbs. Oh. Lorraine, thank you so much for the super chat. Oh. Thank you so much for the super chat, Lorraine. Here's a quote from President Franklin Roosevelt They have given their sons to the military services. They have stoked the furnaces and hurried the factory wheels. They have made the planes and welded the tanks, riveted the ships and rolled the shells. Here are all the states and the territories that contributed to World War II, including my homeland of Puerto Rico. Also, many Filipinos contributed men to World War II. Virgin Islands, Alaska, Arizona, Oklahoma, Wyoming, Washington, South Dakota, Colorado, Nevada, Kansas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Missouri, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Tennessee, Vermont, North Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina, Massachusetts, Georgia, Pennsylvania. The fountain sounds are very soothing. They are. Here's the Atlantic battles, one of them being Normandy. It was the D-Day battle. Or Rhineland, another very big battle. Here's another quote by General George Marshall. We are determined that before the sun sets on this terrible struggle, our flag will be recognized throughout the world as a symbol of freedom on one hand and of a overwhelming force on the other. Mónica, me encanta. Oh, qué bien. There we go. In the distance, we see the Lincoln Memorial. 16th President of the United States. Hey, someone left a $5 super chat. Who was it? Who was this super chatter? Ariel Vera, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat. I appreciate it. And yes, that's my name. And yes, there's another Ariel Vera. There is. You'll know if you've seen my older Facebook Live videos. No, it's not myself. Here we mark the price of freedom. Is Franklin Delano Roosevelt a part of the National Mall? Yes, it is. Or at least part of the park. Indeed, the executive producer for the car tour videos that you've seen. All right, here we have a quote by President Harry S. Truman. Our debt to the heroic men and valiant women in the service of our country can never be repaid. They have earned our undying gratitude. America will never forget their sacrifices. Everyone, my home state, New York. time for a water break. I'm right by water. Where's Connecticut? Should be right next to me. Yeah, it's right over here. I'll point it out. Very dignified memorial. I agree. It's a really gorgeous memorial. Really interesting look to it. Connecticut. Okay.
What's there?
Is it hot in Washington? Yeah, it's getting hot. Where's Kilroy? Asked Stephanie. Yeah, is Kilroy referenced in this memorial? Let me know. Kilroy, for people who don't know, was a little cartoon drawn on tanks and other things during the war, and it was like a symbol of Americans, I think. There's a longer story to that, but let me know if Kilroy is referenced here. That's interesting. It is. Kilroy is referenced in the monument. Oh, cool. If anyone can find where it is. That's awesome. That's cool. I wish I had an image of Kilroy, but you can search it up afterwards. Here's the reflecting pool of the United States of America. I'm watching your perfect video from Slovakia. Oh, Maria, glad you're watching all the way from Slovakia. Pretty gross water. The water is looking a little bit dirty. This one's much cleaner for this memorial. This one's looking a little bit greener. There's a little bit more color to it. Hello from Russia. Please let me know how to say your name in English. My grandfather put a Kilroy was here on the back of every card when he mailed one. Oh, interesting. It's by the fountain. Interesting. Are there usually some military guarding 24/7? I think there's national park rangers. I don't think there's military. Here in the US, military doesn't really guard monuments as far as I know. It's they guard bases, but not monuments. So where is the Vietnam War Memorial? Maybe it's down here? Let's check it out. Yeah, and when it comes to tombs, there's a few of them that do have military. Thank you, B. Griffin. Yeah, in Arlington. It's more towards the Lincoln Memorial. Okay, good to know. Thank you. So here, this should be the conservation gardens. Let's get closer to the gardens. It's called the Constitution Gardens. And is it part of a tidal basin? The tidal basin is on the other side. I'm not entirely sure if this is a natural body of water. Hello. There is a Kilroy engraving. Yes, that's awesome. Can you ride a bike where you are now? I haven't seen bicycles. I don't think they allow bicycles, but I think scooters have passed through. I'm not sure if a bike they'll stop you. I'm not entirely sure. Oh, Brian, yeah, we'll see more of the reflecting pool. But let's say hi to our duck friends here first. Are you British? I sound like a Brit. No, I'm from New York. They're beautiful ducks. And they're relaxing. No one's here. Don't wake them up. I'll try my best not to wake them up. Oh, this one's yawning. They are napping, yeah. I mean, not disturb them. These ones are taking a bath. Very beautiful creatures. Let's go along the reflecting pool. Can we? Thank you, Joe, for watching. Have a great day. There are some fall colors, yeah. There's benches. Yeah, they're the same ones that we saw earlier. Same type. Lots of benches here at least, so good place to take a rest, and there's shade. And there's ducks. And zero tourists, yeah. Barely any tourists. A few tourists from like Maryland. A few tourists from Virginia. Not that many others. Hey! Poron from Tokyo. Welcome. Take an orange leaf as a souvenir. Who wants one? Let me know in the comments. Orange leaf from DC. A memorial leaf. Commemorating all the leaves that have fallen. Every single autumn followed by the next. These fallen leaves will not go in vain. They will feed soil to our grounds, replenish our earth, and grow even more trees, forever giving an eternal cycle of life. Ariel Vera, feel free to quote me. Elisa, that leaf is all yours. And we'll send it off to Europe. It's peaceful until you hear the sirens, yeah. Oh, at least I'm only joking. I'm only joking. Catch them? No. No, I'll let these ducks be in peace. They're nice ducks. Ooh, lots of birds in this tree. So we have a park ranger there in the distance. This reminds me of the duck pond in your town. Yeah, it also reminds me of Central Park, where there's also a lot of ducks. Oh, he's calling us. I'm a beginner in English. No worries, Pardon. Thank you for commenting. Sorry if I missed your comment. Mónica, ¿no tienes que ir para el otro lado? Estoy primero yendo al sitio de Vietnam. Yo sé cómo se dice memorial en español. Pues voy a la memoranda. No sé cómo se dice. Monumento de Vietnam. So I'm going to the Vietnam Memorial. That's why I'm taking this tour, this detour into the mall. But I think we'll come across it soon. At least I hope. Pool's right down there. Yes, Vietnam Memorial. Right down there. Cool. We gotta go this way. Yeah, there we go. We found it. It means I love you in duck slang. Cool. You can say memorial. Memorial. Is it really that the word in Spanish? There has to be a specific word for memorial in Spanish. Memorial? Maybe it's pronounced differently. Ariel, find a spot on the grass. Stretch your long legs across them. Make a photo opportunity. All right, let's go to the Vietnam War Memorial. It'll be monumento in Spanish. Thank you, Manolito. Monumento. El monumento de la guerra de Vietnam. Hey, Labrina, you say that now benches, I remind you of benches now, or benches remind me of me. That's funny. So let's set this up. 1960s. The U.S. goes to war with both sides of Vietnam. The Viet Cong in the South did not approve of U.S. rule or U.S. colonization. The Vietnamese army in the North, run by Ho Chi Minh, was of the Bolshevik philosophy. He actually studied in Harvard, in Boston. He actually worked at the Omni Hotel, which I covered, where he probably made some Boston cream pie. And then he went back to Vietnam to start a communist revolution. and took control of the army. And he also did not approve of the Americans coming in. But the Americans were at a Cold War with Russia, with the Soviet Union, Russia being part of the Soviet Union. And Stalin wanted to push forward and forward. Oh, he was already dead by that point, but his predecessor wanted to push forward and forward. We'll get to Stalin a little bit later with the Korean War. Thus, the US entered the war. However, the Vietnam War wasn't conventional. Korean War was. There was a lot of conventional battles. Same type of battles you would see in World War I, World War II. But in Vietnam, it was guerrilla warfare. The Viet Cong and the Vietnamese army did not want to fight conventional battles because the US actually won every single conventional battle, including one big battle at Saigon. So they stuck to building tunnels underneath the jungle, ambushing soldiers during the middle of the night, attacking convoys when they least expect it, waiting for it to be torrential rain in order to make their attacks. It was a very cruel war, and many men lost their lives, over 58,000 people. And then, 1980, they wanted to build a memorial in their honor. And they held a contest. It was anonymous. Anyone who was an American citizen above the age of 18 could submit. They received 1,400 submissions. The submission that caught their eye was this one. Well, this is the aerial view. It was this one. Now, just like I mentioned, it's very odd for memorials to have the likeness of who they're commemorating. Washington Monument doesn't have the likeness of who they're commemorating, George Washington. And that was pretty much a one-off. Modern memorials that we know today were inspired by this one, mostly. This one did not show the likeness of any of the humans that lost their lives, or a soldier, or some allegory of some fighter, freedom fighter. No, it was a gash into the ground. Who submitted this? A 20-year-old Asian American woman by the name of Maya Lin. Now, you might recognize that name because she ended up becoming a very famous architect. This made her world famous, but later on she made many other amazing buildings. She even has works in Penn Station, for example, and she also built the Museum of Chinese in America Museum in New York City. She's a very talented architect. And this was controversial because, of course, the Vietnam War was a fighting against Asian powers. And after the Korean War, there was a little bit of distaste for Chinese powers as well. And they were afraid that maybe China would get also involved in the entire Vietnam affair. So they didn't look too kindly towards many Asian countries. And they didn't like the fact that there was an Asian American designing this monument. Also, she was a very young woman. Her professor, she was a student at Yale, her professor actually submitted a proposal and he did not get picked. He was passed in the first round. But she persisted nonetheless. And they end up going through with this design because somehow this impacted the very people who were picking this memorial. But there was a very good reason why they were astonished by this design, and we're going to get a closer look, but I'd rather tell you the story here before we step inside. The thing is, the Vietnam Memorial was very controversial. Many Vietnam vets who served in the war end up coming back to a country who did not like them, who thought they were traitors, who thought they were killers, who thought they were maniacs and psychopaths and war criminals. Some words are stronger than others. Some people just did not like the war and they took it out on the veterans. The veterans themselves came back maimed and injured and physically traumatized and also psychologically traumatized. So they had a lot of everything against them. And most people wanted to kind of forget the Vietnam War by the 1980s. They wanted to move past by it. And thus, a memorial with a huge sculpture of a man with holding a huge machine gun, maybe off a helicopter, would have not done well under the eyes of many Americans. And I think this is why they chose this design. It was subtle, and it was sharp. It was poignant. Let's go inside the Vietnam War Memorial. Thank you for the Russian rubies. Please let me know your name. I appreciate it. All right, let's go inside.
And it still sucked.
Also, yeah, Myelin also did not get a good grade. Did she get a C? Was that a C that she ended up getting? Yeah, she did not get a good grade for her design, according to a professor. So Myelin's, and this is a Myelin recent photo of her. This was like taken, I think, in 2011. Her original plan was to make a gash into the ground, and the panels here to be very paper thin. So thin that it almost looks like the ground was cut and they polished it. It was made with black granite, but it was also very controversial black granite. And yes, this memorial, you can rub it. It's meant to be rubbed. They made the names of each individual person who died in chronological order during the war in a font that is normal text size. Most memorials usually have a much larger font, but Myelin picked this font on purpose because when you look onto these names, you cannot help but read it like if it were a book. You cannot help but focus on one name at a time. Michael W. Webb, Francis M. Webster, Robert W. West, Melvin Wildman, Robert E. Church, all these names. And it reflects back at you. Elisa, thank you for tuning in. Hope you enjoy. Have a good night. Here's how the memorial looks like from the ground. And while there were many atrocities that did indeed take place in the Vietnam War, it was a war. The reasons for the war, of course, are controversial. Public opinion wasn't so kind to the war for many, many different reasons. There was also people who were dragged into that war during the draft. People who weren't ready for the carnage that they would see on the battlefield. Here's a very poignant photo of a young soldier in the arms of another one, consoling him as he grieves. Randall, name has been removed. Yeah. 58,000 names. The reflection is so good, it looks like it's reflecting back at you. Jazriel Haywood, Billy M. Holloman, Gary W. Linton, Vernon R. Tweedy, Oh, Elisa, okay. All right. Justine, your best friend's uncle is on that wall. Namvet here. Hey, not today. Oh, thank you for your service. If you want me to try find any name, I'll do my best. Everett A. Wyatt Jr. I'm looking at the man in the mirror, yeah. Yeah, very significant sculpture. And we'll see the reflection. There's also people with paper and a pencil copying the names, at least before the pandemic. Yeah, I can imagine. Owen R. Montgomery. The walls get as tall as 10 feet high. And, oh, I think she was taking a photo of me. 10 feet high. Yeah, we'll see the Washington Monument in the reflection soon. Oh, someone left a photo here. It seems like these are either the son or the daughter, and it's their respective husband or wife of one of the men who passed away. I think there's also women's names here, people of different genders, because there was also nurses, I think, that lost their lives. Even though I think women weren't serving on the field back then, I think. If anyone knows, please clarify. Tamadidge C. Stevens Jr. Take a look at yourself and make a change. Indeed, Jacqueline. In comment. Perhaps you can see your comments reflected. No, doesn't show up. Robert A. Porter. Oh, Dosio. Yeah. This section is significantly rubbed. Thomas W. Skiles and Donald H. Powers. Thomas seems to be rubbed significantly. Charles M. Sykes, Curtis D. Smith, So there was a controversy. There was many controversies with this memorial. One of them not depicting a traditional memorial, but they end up compromising. We'll see that soon. But one of the controversies was with the actual granite slabs. Originally, Maya Lin, the architect, she ended up picking Canadian granite, which is very high quality. And of course, it's the granite that many memorials that would be made with granite would use. However, Canada was the country where many draft dodgers end up going, naturally. So then she had to choose another place. And she chose Swedish granite. Yet another location where there's also a lot of high quality granite. But it was also another country where draft dodgers went. And thus, she had to choose Indian granite. And this is what they end up using, after all. And she really did make a moving memorial, in my opinion. I think it really does leave an effect on many people. Do you know how many names? 58,000 names. Yeah, 58,000. Quite a few. Quite a lot. Michael R. Blanchfield. And it is a wheelchair accessible monument, so it is accessible. Canadian granite comes from Quebec. Oh, cool. Interesting. Hey, thank you for letting us know. So for anyone who's just tuning in, this is the Vietnam War Memorial in in Washington, D.C., here in the nation's capital, in the National Mall.
You'll see this on
Let's read a few more names. So here we have Billy Joe Ontis, Gerald M. Ortego. Many Puerto Ricans also served in the Vietnam War. I'm not sure if he's Puerto Rican, but it does sound like a Puerto Rican last name. Names are not in alphabetical order. I think they kind of are, but on chronologically. I'm not entirely sure. No, they're not. So they're in order of chronological order, but I'm not entirely sure if it's alphabetical in the chronology of year. Because here we see P, R, 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 S. Yeah, if anyone knows for sure. And now COVID has killed 3 times as many. Yes, indeed, it has. All right, so now let's move on. Very poignant memorial, really well done. Maya Lin, I would say, really did a great job. In my opinion, though, of course, everyone is entitled to their own as well. And you can see how thin the slabs are. How thin. Lori says, yes, thank you for taking this walk. My pleasure. The Korean memorial's across the Lincoln Memorial, so we'll see after the Lincoln Memorial. Here's the names of the people, so you can find the name if you want to. It says where they are, east, west, 1975 to 1959. So there's books where you can find the name. Now, the compromise for making a memorial that wasn't quite symbolic or allegoric of the men and women and people of all genders who sacrificed their lives is this one. This one was their compromise. Three soldiers, one of them African American. I point that out because memorials, unfortunately, prior to the Vietnam War memorial, as far as my knowledge, there's not that many that feature African American men who did serve in many American wars. There's, of course, the one in Boston, which was being repaired when I visited. The book is accessible, despite it being COVID. Yeah, you can go inside the book. I think one is supposed to be Hispanic, really. So I think he's African American. Is one of these two guys supposed to be Hispanic? Let me know in the comments. Tosio says, thank you. My pleasure, Tosio. I'm not sure if you served, but if you did, thank you for your service. The Vietnam War is mentioned and it reminds me of the book A Prayer of Owen Meany. So I don't think they might be based on the likeness of real soldiers, but I don't think they're supposed to represent exactly the soldiers. I think they're more allegorical. But let's see, here's a plaque. It says, here's a plaque in memory of the men and women who served in the Vietnam War and later died as a result of their service. We remember and honor their sacrifice. Unfortunately, despite many African American men and amongst other ethnicities serving in the war that weren't necessarily of light skin, when they came back from the war, they came back to America that's still the same, still persecuting against them, wrongfully murdering some of them through excessive force, them not being able to find jobs, them not be able to go to certain universities, not be able to send their own kids to certain schools. I've had family who experienced that racism directly also here in America. And it was a very real reality for these African American soldiers who came back from the war. And that happened before in the Korean War. It happened in World War II. It happened in World War I, where quickly there was the Red Summer, where thousands of African American soldiers were lynched. The African American community, and to extension a few other communities like the Native Americans and Asian Americans and Hispanic Americans, had enough. And on August 28th, 1963, almost 100 years later, when the Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States of America, passed the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing the slaves, they marched on Washington. 250,000 people came here to the mall, to these very steps of the Lincoln Memorial. A march on Washington for jobs and freedom. There was many famous people at this march. Many people of lighter skin, of course. We have Bob Dylan and Joe Baez. But then you have people of African Americans who were like Mahalia Jackson and also Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. However, Dr. King was very last. He took that slot because no one else wanted to take that very last slot in that march, giving that speech. Because everyone else thought that that last spot would be, everyone would start tuning out, people would start leaving, The news reporters wouldn't be here. It's not worth it, and it was only a 4-minute slot. So he decided to take it. And he came up here on these very steps of the Lincoln Memorial. So this was the Lincoln Memorial, commemorated, dedicated, 1922. I'll show you the dedication ceremony. Photos right over here. Here we have Howard Taft. We have President Harding. And I don't know who the other guy is. Let me know who he is. Taft ended up becoming president after. So this was the commemoration, 1922. Or he was the president before.
Hey guys, I have an idea.
There's a nurse's sculpture. Did I miss it? I haven't seen the nurse's sculpture yet. And the Lincoln Memorial made me cry. So the original plan of the Lincoln Memorial was actually a really outrageous one. But not so much when you look at it in the context of the Washington Monument and the U.S. Capitol right behind it. This monument was supposed to be a gigantic pyramid. Yep, a massive pyramid was going to be built here at the Washington Monument. Oh, we have more helicopters passing through. But wait a minute. Why did they want to build a pyramid? Well, it was also another Masonic symbol. Instead, they end up going something that looks a little bit more like the Parthenon in ancient Greece, in the Acropolis. However, it was supposed to be built much earlier. But most of this area by the early 1900s was all swamp and dredged land. It was very low quality land, very far away from Washington, D.C. proper, very long walk away. There was no infrastructure or anything. And one of the most powerful men in politics at that time, his name was Joe Cannon, and he was a Republican. But wait a minute. Republicans nowadays are very different from the Republicans 100 years ago. The Republicans 100 years ago was the party of Lincoln. Joe Cannon was an ardent Republican, and he was a huge aficionado of Lincoln. He admired him deeply, and he pushed against building this memorial. But why would the most powerful men in politics at that time, and here's a photo of him, push against building a memorial after a president he deeply admires? Well, it was because it was swampland. He thought it was a big disgrace to have a monument to one of the great presidents of the United States of America who got us through the Civil War, who ended up passing the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, and also ended up dying in office by the hands of an assassin. Why would they build it in a swamp? Luckily, Joe Cannon, luckily for us in retrospect, Joe Cannon was taken out of office. And he ended up looking back in retrospect, once they ended up building it, it was a good job to actually build it. But back to 100 years later, after the passing of the Emancipation Proclamation, the March on Washington, Dr. King only had 4 minutes to talk. Now, here's Dr. King. And Dr. King, this is a photo that many Americans will have associated Dr. King with. A protester. A no-do-gooder. A man who's just causing a ruckus in the South. That's how a lot of people saw him. Very few people in America at that time, according to many polls, supported civil rights. And he was the very last speaker that day. The march was gigantic. 250,000 people, making it one of the largest protests in American history at that point. There's been bigger protests since then, but that was the biggest one at that point. John F. Kennedy was in power, and John F. Kennedy said many things in support of civil rights, but he wasn't quite pushing the limits. Despite meeting up with Dr. King, he wasn't doing quite the big moves. He was allowing maybe an African-American kid to go to a school in Arkansas or Alabama, accompanied by armed guards. But to Dr. King, who was in his mid-30s, considered that a token symbol of civil rights, not real substantial change. And thus, that's why they end up marching here on Washington. But as Dr. King assumed the podium for being the very last person to give his speech, he had something already written. And he started saying it out loud. Of course, people are listening because he's already very famous amongst the civil rights movement. Among these 250,000 people marching, 90,000 of those people were white. One of them, I think, was Bernie Sanders, actually. And of course, Bob Dylan and Joe Baez. But someone in the back yelled, "Hey, Dr. King, tell him about your dream," as he was finishing this practiced speech. That woman was a famous African-American singer, Mahalia Jackson. And Dr. King looks back, and you can see this on the video. There's a very cool long video on it. The copyright is owned by the King family, so fortunately I can't really post the full thing here. But check out the video. And he looks back and he says, kind of nods. And a few of his closest confidants who were sitting around him as he was giving the speech, and he took this pause, end up kind of whispering to each other, one of them being Dr. King's speechwriter. He then ends up saying, "Oh, he's about to give a sermon. Get ready." They knew the oratory power of Dr. King. And thus, he started speaking about his dream. No plan, no script, no notes. This was an extraneous speech. Sorry for mispronouncing that. Extraneous speech. Completely spontaneous. Ended up being 17 minutes long. Talking about the dream he had, seeing a nation, hopefully in some near future, where we really don't care about the color of our skin, and that we are seen for the judge of our character. Now, this is very powerful for me personally, being on these very steps, and we're going to walk up them soon. I'll tell you a little bit about something else that happened a little bit earlier. Because I myself don't really like carrying notes. I don't like really speaking with the script. Even when I do recorded videos, I like going kind of off the cuff. And I've noticed throughout history, some of the best speeches are done spontaneously. And yes, you have great speechwriters, but like Winston Churchill, but I think he's more the exception rather than the rule. Some of the best speeches that most people know, like the "I Have a Dream" speech by Martin Luther King, is done spontaneously. It's true, beautiful oratory that came directly from the heart. So let me play you a clip of that speech so you get to know what the speech was about. And he does inspire me because, personally, there is a power to words. There's a power to saying something from the heart. There might not be a script. There might not be something written. There might not be some plan or some structure, at least fully planned out. And yes, there might be mistakes. There might be mispronunciations. There might be stumbles. But I think there's a power from speaking from the heart. Despite all that can go wrong, there's so much that can go right. And when it goes right, just like when Dr. King was here on August 28th, 1963, it inspired a nation and quickly inspired the world. passing civil rights. And we're still going through our stumbling blocks right now, but things are changing for the better. So let me play you a portion of his speech as we walk up the steps. So that was a portion of Dr. King's speech, 17 minutes long. You can watch the full thing online. There's some really cool footage where they have enhanced it with AI and colorized it. So what would Dr. King think of the world today? Well, I'll say this. He wasn't happy with John F. Kennedy's token civil rights gestures. And he was very blunt about it to the public and to John F. Kennedy himself. And while John F. Kennedy was a good president in many other respects, he wasn't pushing quite hard enough. So I think Dr. King will have not had any restraint in saying how disappointed he is with what's happening in America right now. I think that would probably be the case. A lot of, unfortunately, textbooks end up depicting Dr. King as this kind of hero for all America. But for the most of his life, people thought he was a criminal. They thought he was a rabble rouser. It was only after this speech that more than 52% of Americans, according to a few polls, end up supporting the civil rights movement. But still only 52%. And I think in the textbooks, they really never truly capture the amount he was actually really pissed off. And he wasn't really an angry man, but he was disappointed by America, and he really wanted to change it. He really had that dream. And I think it's important to not see Dr. King as some hero that has come and gone. He was killed only at 39 years old. When he gave this speech, he was only in his mid-30s. And he would have only been 80 years old right now. It's not even that old. He would have been as old as some of our US politicians. So he was taken away too early. Big Doll says we all bleed the same. So here it says the Federal Union of the United States at the heart of Lincoln's purpose is symbolized in his memorial by 36 columns. Beneath the names of the 36 states composing of the Union in his lifetime, when the memorial was designed by the Union, included the 48 states named on the Attic frieze a generation later in 1959, Alaska and Hawaii attained statehood, fully joining the destinies with the United States of America. So like 2 decades prior to the March on Washington, a woman was ousted from a concert hall on Constitutional Avenue here in Washington, D.C., not allowed because of the color of her skin. She was Marian Anderson, very famous singer during her time, mostly from opera. And because of this happened, Eleanor Roosevelt, the wife of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and probably one of the greatest Americans to have ever lived, in my opinion. The more I learn about her, the more I really do admire her. She ended up hosting the concert here. 75,000 people were in attendance. And she ended up getting to sing her concert. Those 20 years after, Marian Anderson also performed on the March on Washington. Let's go up the Lincoln Memorial. Here is the 16th President of the United States of America, designed by Daniel Chester French, one of the most famous sculptors in American history. He also designed many sculptures all around New York. I mentioned his name many, many different times. Here's a photo of him. On top of the sculpture it says, "In this temple, as in the hearts of the people for whom he saved the Union, the memory of Abraham Lincoln is enshrined forever." Oh, Judith, why is that? Let me know. Wow. So Abraham Lincoln was indeed a very large man, very tall. Beautiful ceiling as well. Allow some natural light to come through. Did Lincoln end slavery? Yes, he did. Officially, the Constitution, the amendment. This is the document, Emancipation Proclamation. So let's do that. Let's go. Hey everyone, no politics here, so feel free to ask me anything about history, food, culture. Well, in this case, ask me anything about history. You look like, just look at the people dwarfed by the columns, yeah. So what is in his hair? I don't see anything strange. He has huge ears. Olivier, that's for a different channel. Feel free to discuss that in a different channel. Alright. So, his likeness is meant to look exactly when he was during war. So Daniel Chester French found specific photographs while he was serving as president during the Civil War because he wanted to get that weariness. So. Kathy, 1922. His tomb? No, this is not a tomb. Nope, just a memorial. Wow. Very kind of wet concrete, has a very porous, not concrete, or marble. So here we have a speech. When Dr. King gave his speech in 1963, he actually referenced Abraham Lincoln's speech. Abraham Lincoln starts with 7 years ago. He starts with 7 years ago. So here it says, I'll read just a little bit. Fellow countrymen, at this second appearing to take the oath of presidential office, there is of less occasion for extended address than there was at the first. Then the statement, somewhat in detail, of a course to be pursued seemed fitting and proper now at the expiration of 4 years, during which public declarations have been constantly called forth on every point and phrase of the great contest, which still absorbs the attention and engrosses the energies of the nation. Little that is new could be presented. Let me see how he ends it. With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive to finish the work we are, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. Is the statue made of marble? I think it is. It should be. Daniel Chester French worked a lot in marble. Yeah, he worked a lot in marble. I don't think he used casting in his work. I don't know where Lincoln is buried or entombed. Let me know. I don't know where he is. Beautiful moving memorial. And beautiful space. It's like the Pantheon in Rome. It's human scale. It's huge, but it's human scale. So you don't feel like you're It's not like the Washington Monument. If you're right next to the Washington Monument, you feel dwarfed. But here, you feel part of the room. It's a really cool feeling. So here we have his famous speech that many people know. 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on the great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that the nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this, but in a larger sense. We cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to the cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Jackie said, when I was here, I felt like I was in a place of holiness. Yeah. There's exhibits, apparently.
Not after the battle, but like several years after.
Lori, the elevator goes to exhibits and restrooms, but I think it's closed right now. Alright, say goodbye to Lincoln. Let's continue on with our journey forth into the rest of the Washington Mall. First, I'll show this view. Look at that. Highly recommend the film Lincoln, directed by Steven Spielberg. Daniel Day-Lewis does a great job in portraying Lincoln. He actually recreated his voice as well. Despite Lincoln being a very tall man, he actually had a very light voice. He spoke very lightly. He had kind of a low pitch or high pitch voice. It's hard to recreate, but Daniel Day-Lewis does a very good job. It says, I have a dream, Martin Luther King Jr. in March of Washington for Jobs and Freedom, August 28, 1963. Uh-oh. The little kid is laughing inside, ruining the piece. Bye, Stephanie. Thank you so much for watching. Let's zoom in, actually. Get a better view. Sally Field is also very good as Mary Todd Lincoln, yeah. Jackie. Lots of echo space, yeah. Whoa. Well, I go to the Ford's Theater. I have reached out to them. They haven't reached back yet, so crossing fingers. Crossing fingers that they come back to me. Hopefully I can go. I can't go guerrilla style because they have a strict no video policy, but if they end up wanting to collaborate, then I can show it to you. Crossing fingers. So let's see the Korean War Monument for our final stop on this tour. Long shadows, late afternoon. Yeah, I think so. Awesome view of the monument and the US Capitol. Oh yeah, especially from this point of view. Let me zoom in. Right there. Is there film footage of Lincoln? No. I don't think there's film footage, and I don't think there's voice recording of him. Film was invented after his death. I think also the phonograph was invented shortly after his death. So unfortunately not, but the way that people know that he had a very high-pitched voice was due to various first-hand accounts. And there's many of them, so it's pretty well known in America at the time and in many historical records that he did have that high-pitched voice. So many times Lincoln, people kind of portray him with that deep voice, you know, 7 years ago. Because, you know, they see this imposing man, this great president, of course he must have a deep voice. But, you know, it was more like 7 years ago, something along those lines. Okay, we're close to the Martin Luther King Memorial, so that'll be our final stop. Let's go. First, the Korean War Memorial. He spoke at Cooper Union, yes, he did. Abraham Lincoln. The 1950s. America kicks off the Cold War as North Korea's communist powers and the Soviet Union invade the North. and push further south beyond the 38th parallel. The Korean War was also another bloody affair. And just like Vietnam, with its terrible weather and very harsh environmental conditions, North Korea, or the Korean War, had very harsh conditions on the other end. Rather than being hot and sticky, it was very cold and freezing. Many men suffered from frostbite. And here we see 19 soldiers depicted, all in a line in their huge overcoats. And these 19 soldiers, each of them are reflected back by that black granite wall, for a total of 38 soldiers representing the 38th parallel. My own grandfather was a Korean War vet, and I know many, many other people who probably have families who had a Korean War veteran. Let me know. This is an amazing monument to see in the winter. Yeah, I can only imagine. Oh yeah, very poignant memorial. My dad was a borinqueño, borinqueñer. Yes, there was a battalion of Puerto Ricans, soldiers. That's really cool. My grandfather actually was not a borinqueñer. I don't think so, but they were very famous. Mr. Miguel Ángel Ortiz, indeed, that was my grandfather, Miguel Ángel Ortiz. Thomas Jefferson Memorial is closed. The Franklin Delano Roosevelt is a bit too far, so we'll ending with MLK. I think I gotta charge my battery. They are so lifelike. They're 7 feet tall, so they're just slightly taller than real humans. I thought they were real people. They do look like real people, yeah, especially if you come here later in the day or during a snowy day. You can see the reflection back at you at the faces of different people in the war. Hey Brenda, your dad was searching for landmines, found one. He's a heart recipient. Oh wow, Brenda. Wonderful. Your father did a great service. That's awesome. Everyone give a big purple heart for Brenda's father. That is a very admirable achievement. Or honor, I mean. Not achievement, but honor. Very admirable. So the fountain here is closed, but this was installed pretty recently, in 1995. President Bill Clinton was here. And 54,000 people died. Oh, wow. 8,000 missing, 7,000 captured. Freedom is not free. That's what it says on there. All right, let's go to MLK. It is etched. It looks like chiseled. Oh, that's impressive. Are those photos real photos? Yes, they're based on real photos, but they were etched. It looks like it. Chiseled or etched onto the granite. So how do we get to Martin Luther King? Let's see. Okay, so we gotta go this way. Cool. Okay. Oh, there's the circulator bus. Well, that's cool. You can take that all around the National Monument. Kathy says, looking at this Korean War monument, you're getting the same feeling you felt when you were at Auschwitz. Yeah, it has a very, very poignant feeling. A little bit more, like unsettling feeling because the soldiers seem like they're very lifelike. I have to connect my battery pack because I'm running out of battery. The circulator bus is free. Yes, it is. It's still free. I'm not sure, because of the pandemic, there has been no need to pay, but I'm not sure if it's free in general. So let me know if that changed recently. But I know, as far as I know, it used to be free. And they do have markings in the front that say it is free. So Ariel Vero says, please consider supporting Urbanus. Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you to all the star senders, the patrons, the supporters, the PayPalers, and the super chatters for all giving your support for these videos. I can afford data, go on these trips so I can show you these places, virtual trips, have time to research, and also for gear like battery packs. And I got to disconnect my mic, so we're going to regular sound. Phone turned off for a second. Is the circulator no, circulator is different from the mega bus. I mean the big bus. Big bus tours is their own tour company. Circulator is like a public bus that goes through all the sites. It's a public bus that goes through all the sites. Yeah, that's what we will be out here later today. Oh, cool. I'm glad you will. That's awesome. Lori, sorry, I misread. Will I be here out later today? No. Something weird is happening with my phone. My screen keeps turning off for some reason. No, I won't be here. I won't be doing a video tonight, but you'll see one tomorrow at 1 p.m. Where is this? Oh, I think my phone might be overheating. There's too much sun. We're close. Okay. So we are indeed close. Okay, everyone, sorry about this. Something's wrong with my phone. Something's wrong with my phone. I think my phone might be getting overheated. I'm very, very close. So let's see if we can get there on time. But yeah, I think there was so much sun that my phone is a bit overheated. I think that's why things are going off. Jordan says, super chat, thank you so much for the super chat. I'll need an ice pack for my phone. I don't think that quite works, unfortunately. Oh, if only there was like a cooling pack for the phone during very hot days. Thank you so much for the super chat, Jordan, and also Mark. I appreciate it. Thank you everyone for the super chat. And if you want to donate, just in case I end up going away, PayPal.me/ArielVieira for a one-time contribution, and Patreon.com/Urbanist for a recurring one if you want to become a supporter. And it's a fine day. It is a fine day today. And finally, here we go. We are in the shadow. And every day you can tune in at 1 p.m. until Monday, 26th. And I think I'm good with the mask. There's literally no one around. So Monday, 26th, you can see me every day, 1 p.m. All right, we're getting close. Cool. Wow, they put like major roads in the middle of this national park. Donate for a spare battery. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, 4K Wanderer, for putting the links to both my PayPal for a single contribution and to my Patreon for a recurring one. So the original plan of the Martin Luther King Memorial was to make a memorial that looks like it's jutting off from the ground. And we're here, approaching it. Oh yes. Hey Lori, thank you for the night tour. Yeah, you know, I'll be doing a night bus tour. I really want to actually show that. So stay tuned. Most likely tomorrow, maybe. I'll see when I can do it. Jackie, thank you so much for the stars. What is the date of this memorial? This one's very recent. I don't know the exact date, but it's very, very recent. Hence why there's not that many people here. Will I be live tonight? No, tomorrow, 1 p.m. You'll see me. You'll probably see an extra live, night live, Thursday or Friday. So out of the mountain of despair, stone of hope. So here it is, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. himself, the man who had a dream and is waiting patiently, because he's always been a very patient man, not consumed by anger. And of course, anger is understandable when one is beaten down over and over again. But what is admirable about Dr. King was that despite all the reasons to be angry, every single reason to be angry or to be jaded or to live in despair or to violently attack back. He decided to stand his ground peacefully, looking the very presidents of the United States of America straight in the eye and expressing his disappointment because he's hoping that his dream will come true at some point. So here's to Dr. King. Here's to this country that has been controversial, but every single country has its growing pains. And whenever you are an individual who's on the top, there's always a whole lot more responsibility, and there's also a whole lot more scrutiny, and this country is no exception. We have been on the very top since World War II, and this country has gone through a lot of scrutiny as well, and there's also a lot of responsibility, and we all go through our growing pains, and hopefully Dr. King's dream does come true. Unlike some of his colleagues who wanted to separate from the United States of America, start their own country, he had hope in America, and hopefully we can too. I'm Ariel with Urbanist. Thank you everyone so much for watching. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Here's the Grand Tidal Basin in Washington, D.C., and many other monuments here in the memorial. See you tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for more Washington, D.C. And thank you everyone who's been lending your support and contributions. Keep being awesome, and always keep on dreaming and exploring. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.